Welcome back to another episode of the Elevated Chat Room. Elevate your mind, elevate your life. It's your host, Lonzo Jones. I got my guy, Dwayne Malone, aka the behind-the-scene co-host. He's back there working the cameras like he always does. Now we got a special guest with us tonight. Before I introduce her, I'm going to introduce the topic. The topic for today or tonight is Fueled by Passion, how to build a business you love. We have Miss Ashley Morrow with us. She's a local entrepreneur. Well, she's actually a big-time entrepreneur. I'm going to kind of let her go a little bit deeper into who she is and what all she's involved in. Ashley, tell them who you are.
I like the way you said big time. That's what I'm going to tell everybody. I'm going to be like, I was introduced as big time.
Big time.
So I'm going to change my business card says that I'm the lead retail therapist at my retail store, but I'm going to say big time therapist.
Big time therapist.
Big time therapist.
Every now and then you got to let them know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's wrong, let somebody else eat the humble pie sometimes. Do you know what I mean? So my name is Ashley Morrow. I am a local entrepreneur here in the Shoals area. And so I kind of got kickstarted in healthcare and, then healthcare started, not being fun. When you're having to tell everybody, no, please don't do that. You're going to go to jail. Please don't do that. You're going to go to jail. Please, you don't want to be the person that's always like the ethics police. And so I sort of moved into like, what could I do that really, that's why I love this topic, like something I could be passionate and love all the time. So I invented a product back in 2014 called Alchemy Jewelry Sealer. I took it to market in 2015. It's in over 400 stores. I've been featured on Home Shopping Network. I'm currently on Jewelry Television. And from there, things have kind of spiraled out of control because serial entrepreneurship should be in the DSM. It is a mental illness with no stopping. But I do own several local businesses. The one that I'm at the most that people kind of associate me with is the Shop at Coldwater. It is we're an award-winning ladies boutique in Tuscumbia. Thought I'd throw that in there. I've got a trophy. It's certified.
You heard it.
Yes. We were actually named the emerging retailer for the entire state of Alabama from the Alabama Retailers Association because I made stupid TikToks during COVID and we survived. So it's really funny because I asked the judges, I said, so did I win this because I covered myself in neon glow sticks and danced in the dark? And they were like, that was an entry of one. You're correct. No one else did that to stay alive. So, but I co-own an insurance agency and I also own the Palace in downtown Tuscumbia. So I literally have the keys to the ice cream store. I don't take near enough advantage of that. I'm trying to get skinny. And so it's like, you don't want to really hit the ice cream store all the time, but it's like, you got the keys. So it's like 24-hour access.
And I'm an ice cream guy.
See, and now we have like a playroom in the back that you can rent out for birthday parties. So there's like, I could do ice cream and air hockey. So it's like, I have to keep telling myself like, it's not worth putting your bra back on to go back downtown. Just stay at home, stay on the couch. You can get that salted caramel brownie some other time.
You are hilarious. Has anybody ever told you that?
Well, that's what I try to tell people all the time. I try to remind them, I'm like, I'm hilarious. I actually have a theory that I'm funny, not fun. So my husband he's a little bit older than me. He loves to travel. He looked at me, he was like a little bit. He's a little bit older than me. But he loves to travel and he's a lot of fun. But I do not like to fly. He just got back from the Panama Canal and he was like, I went ziplining over the jungle. I'm like, hell, that sounds like my personal hell to go ziplining with a bunch of bugs and critters. Like I'm out, I'm not interested. So we go to dinner with a bunch of his college friends and they said something like, oh, Ashley, are you going on this next trip with Skip? And Skip was like, well, Ashley's not a big flyer, so she's going to skip this one. They said, oh, okay. And then they asked about, hey, have y'all tried this restaurant? And I was like, well, I'm not like a super adventurous eater. Like that's probably a little too much for me. And then they said, Ashley, do you on the Bourbon Trail with Skip? And I was like, I don't drink bourbon. And then I was like, I'm really not fun at all. I was like, but I'm funny. So that's my line now. I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I can't come. I'm funny, not fun. That's literally how I turn down social invites now. I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I'm funny, not fun. Like if I don't want to go, that's what I say. I'm funny, not fun.
That's a good punchline to have.
No, it is because it's like, I don't like to travel. I'm I'm 43 years old. I kind of got this figured out right now. What I like to do, what I don't like to do. I don't like to get on an airplane. I really just don't like traveling. I don't want to pack a bag. I don't know who I'm going to be next Thursday. Is she going to be fancy? Is she going to be casual? I do not know. I can't take all of it with me. The SUV will only hold so much. That airplane has a weight limit. You can't take everything in your suitcase. Anyways, then I have all this anxiety that's probably needs to be medicated. Because then I'm like, well, how am I going to put all that in the suitcase? So it's just better for me to stay at home and take care of the dogs and take care of our people and take care of the businesses. And
do what keeps you at peace.
That's it. My husband loves it. It's very He goes and has a great time. He takes this little stuffed pumpkin that's called Ashley, and he'll be like, me and Ashley at dinner, me and Ashley meeting the cast. So this little pumpkin Ashley has kind of become like she's a little local celebrity. But now people feel some sort of way about it when you don't travel with your husband. I had a man come up to me in Walmart when my husband was in Switzerland, and it was like everybody knew I like didn't go. People were kind of razzing me about it. I would never let my husband. I'm like, I don't give a shit what you and your husband do. Like that's between y'all and the Lord. Like, what do I care? So this man, no clue who he is, comes up to me and said, I cannot believe that you let your husband go to Switzerland without you. And I went, I'm sorry, who are you? His name was like Dwight. I said, well, Dwight, the next time we have you over for dinner, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. And also, off. Like, what on earth? Who in the world goes up to a random lady at Walmart and says that? So you got to be careful about social media, folks.
But that's what happens though when you post on social media. People feel like now they have the right.
That's right.
To speak into your life or to say something or to address. So anything you put on social media, if you don't want nobody, to have a comment or to approach you about it, it's best not to put it on there. And we've learned that the hard way.
Oh gosh, yeah. It's interesting that these stories and these connections that we look for, they're not necessarily permission for entry.
It's
right? It's, I'm willing to share this with you. I'm willing to have this back and forth. But our sort of like general civility has been so lost because, have you ever seen the meme that says, don't let your Facebook mouth get your real life teeth knocked out? There's something to be said about that we now have these online conversations and these very real online relationships that in the real world we think have no consequences.
That's true.
That these emotional relationships that we establish, they don't have a real life consequence, but they do because they affect your friendships and your marriage and your whatever with your coworkers. They become the things that we talk about. Hey, did you see on Facebook? Did you watch that reel on Facebook? Did you see that on Instagram? There's now the line between virtual reality and reality is so thin that I think that we have to be very conscious about how we share, how we engage, because it is our real life, right? Those are the real emotions, the real stories. Like, I watched this video. This happened, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago. A friend of mine lives in South Alabama. She's posting about this couple. I have no clue who these people are, okay? They had fertility struggles. They adopt these two little twin girls from Africa. And it's like this beautiful story. Well, they get pregnant. Okay. So they invite all their friends and family over and somebody's got a camera in the corner. And so they bring out, this cake and they're going to do this gender reveal. They tell everybody what a gift from God this is and how lucky they are and blah, blah. So they cut the cake. It's a boy. Everybody screams. And they say, well, we actually have a surprise for you guys. And they bring out another cake because they're pregnant with twins. Cut the cake. It's a boy. Everybody's crying. People are losing their mind. They said, but before you leave, and they pull out a third cake.
No way.
I do not know these people. I am bawling and squalling. What is them having 3 kids to me? But because these stories are a connection, right? It's this human interest that we really need. I think especially the pandemic changed so much of what we're looking for and how we're wanting to connect. And we're this sort of like overly connected and more disconnected than ever. Right?
That's true.
Because like we don't do this. We don't break bread. We don't sit across a table and like smell each other and see each other and feel each other. And it's also virtual, but it is now our reality.
Yeah.
And so that line is almost non-existent now. And so we have to respect that emotion, that effort that we put into it because it's what we get back, right? Like, I don't know who those people are in South Alabama, but now I know they got 5 kids and I'm very invested.
Yeah. We got to understand there's boundaries to this stuff, and whether you're the person that's posting or you're the person that's coming or that's reacting, you have to know there's boundaries. And I think sometimes those lines get blurred and we just jump all in. Like sometimes my wife will bring me something like, I do not care about this whatsoever. But in her world, it's like, it's important. So I'm like sitting there just watching. I'm like, okay, yeah.
Right. But have you seen the thing about like, I don't know anybody that works at Kohl's third shift, but I want to know why they're mad at their manager. Like we get really invested in these stories of strangers, right? We do. And I'll tell you something. I think boundaries are such an important topic that people don't talk about enough. I think we talk about it in generalities, but I heard somebody say this once, and I will say this, and I will say this, and I will say this, that if you do not have boundaries, create them, and whoever gets the maddest, that's who needed the boundary.
That's good.
That's a moment of impact right there when you create a boundary and the people that are close to you, they kick back and they get angry. That's who you need the boundary from, because those people were not ready to give up what you gave them, and probably what you gave them with nothing in return.
True that.
And no relationship is always give and give and give and take and take and take. It has to be kind of back and forth, but boundaries really kind of set you up for success with that. And I think we've always kind of thought about boundaries as like, oh, well, that's what we talk about in therapy. Well, you should probably be in therapy. But these are very real world things now, because everything's 24/7. Like, imagine these kids are growing up 24/7 communication. There is no break. When we got home from school, there was a break.
Yeah.
Our parents had the break. And then when we got in college, well, we had a break until 9 p.m. when them free cell phone minutes kicked in. You know, you may be too young to remember that, but it used to be, I can't talk to you after 9 p.m. because that's when my free minutes kicked in.
Or the weekend.
Yeah. So there were these breaks, and now there is no break. And so I think that boundaries have to be such a part of it, because people forget that you have to reset. So I was looking over some of the topic things that we were going to talk about tonight. And it's so interesting. So I don't know if you guys know who Derek Oden is. He was like an All-American player at Alabama. He was on the national championship team in 92. He went on to play pro ball. He and I have worked on some sales projects together. And when my first husband passed away and I was really struggling, and it was like, I wasn't sure, like, is this grief? Am I tired? Am I just being lazy? Am I just choosing to like sit and wallow in my grief? Okay, D.O., that man is a machine. You don't get to play pro football because you're lazy.
Right.
You don't get to play pro football or play under Gene Stallings because you're not motivated. Right. Okay, so this guy's a machine. I respect everything he does. He is so laser focused. He's a very intense person. And I remember I was talking to him. He called me and checked on me. And I told him, I said, I don't know. I just feel like I don't know what to do. And he was like, have you ever thought about taking a nap? I was like, I'm sorry. I didn't know you knew what naps were. I thought you just got unplugged at the end of the night and like they plugged you in and they charged you up for a couple hours and you went back. And he was like, there is therapy and rest.
Mm-hmm.
There is a reset and rest that and a lot of times as entrepreneurs, it's the question of, do I work a little harder, or when I work harder, am I against a brick wall? Like, when do I rest and when do I push harder? And it's like, that all comes back to boundaries. That all comes back to that self-respect and trying to figure all of that out. And that was one of the best things that he could have said to me. One of the hardest and toughest and most strategic workers I've ever met, giving me permission to rest. I didn't need his permission, but boy, I took it. I took it. It wasn't what I was looking for, but yes, to have somebody that respects you who says, it's okay for you to take a nap.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I love naps. Man, I love a nap. I love it.
It's golden, especially now. Let me ask you this, since you mentioned entrepreneurship. So what inspired your journey to become an entrepreneur? And how has your passion played a role in that?
So I think that we hear a lot of buzzwords like corporate culture and, middle management, things like that. And so people think that corporate culture, that you got to have 100 employees, you got to have at least 50 employees. Mm-hmm. But culture can happen in a small business. It can happen when you have 5 members on your team. And so I found myself consistently working for small companies that I thought the culture could be different. And then as a leader, when you're looking at culture and you're looking at how people are treated and the standard and what you're looking for, it made me say, I could do my own thing and I can decide how my team is treated and I can decide how they're led. I can decide who I mentor. I can decide that I'm going to bring people in to work for me for 2 to 3 years, and then they're going to step up and go somewhere else. And hopefully they're better because of the time they spent with me. Yeah. And that just became a goal of mine was, is this something I can do on my own? And can I create a culture that changes lives?
That's good. I have never really heard someone say, well, I was working for corporate America or the corporate culture, and then I wanted to change that on a smaller level and be a person that could be a mentor or a role model for the people that I'm hiring. You don't hear that too often. Most times, like, well, you know what? I'm working here so I can learn the business, so I can go create my own business so I can make money. It's always centered around money or a position or a title, not necessarily the impact that I can make on my employees. So that's big.
Well, we talk about things like, as women, like leaning back and leaning in and all that crap that that Facebook lady came up with, all that all that corporate PR stuff that ultimately means women never think they've done enough to mentor. Women never think they do enough to apply for the job. There was a study from Stanford, I think, that came out that proved that women, when they looked at a job like requirement, like, hey, this is the kind of education we want you to have, if they didn't meet like 80% of it, they would not apply. Men, if they met 50%, would apply. Okay. Women will ask themselves, well, I just don't think I've done enough to be a mentor. Because I always thought, well, when I make $100,000 a year, I will be enough to have mentored. When I go on Home Shopping Network, I will have done enough that somebody will want to hear my story and connect with what I do. But there's always another reason. There's always another excuse. Sometimes it's just enough that I started a business.
Yeah. Yeah.
I started a side hustle. I raised my children and none of them got hooked on drugs. Like there are a lot of things that women and men, this isn't just about women, that women and men can do to offer mentorship. You don't have to be a millionaire. You don't have to have hundreds of people work for you, because almost nobody is going to affect change at a macro level.
Right.
It is the micro.
Yes.
It is the one person that you change that changes the next person that changes the next person. It is that conversation. You know, right now in this really kind of crazy political environment, I think there's a lot of leaders who are saying, so what does my leadership look like now? Like, how do I step in? How do I lead? How do I help? How do I comfort? And I think there's a micro conversation that happens, right? I have people who come in my shop who say, I'm excited about this. I'm really scared about this. And to be able to have them come and share with you, it's its own ministry, right? And sometimes it's just a ministry of one, but then what if she goes home and she's better to her family? And then that family goes in and they're better at school and they're better at that work because she was the one who set the tone and tenor of the day. What if he comes in and we got to make him laugh and he got to go home and be better to his family? These micro level conversations matter as much, if not more, than the person who gets on the stage and speaks to 3,000.
Yeah. Because we even know when you're speaking to a large crowd, 3,000, it's not going to be that many that's actually going to get up and implement what you've talked to them about. So we can go into a school assembly and we can talk to 400 kids. We know all 400 kids is not even take one thing that we said and go act upon. You may get, if it's 400, you may get maybe 14, 20,
right.
You know, that's actually going to do. And that's the micro,
yes.
You know, so that I like that angle. That makes a lot of sense. And we have to get out of our own heads thinking that we've got to be somebody super special, or not even necessarily super special, but at a high level in life, because everybody's special. Everybody's worthy, you know. Sure. So the thing is, do you trust yourself enough to pour into somebody else? Find that area that you have some type of expertise in or a high knowledge in and share it.
So I'm going to tell you this. I don't even know that you have to have a high level of expertise. Let me tell you what my goal is. I finally said this the other day out loud. So here's my goal. I want, when I die, for people to show up to my funeral to be like, I had this conversation with her and it changed the way I felt about X, and that changed my life. She secretly slid me $500 when we didn't have groceries, and that gave me hope. I want people to be so overwhelmed with these random acts of kindness that they know nothing about, because the micro changes the macro. But you don't have to have money to do that. You just got to have a good attitude and a good spirit. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to be an expert. You don't really have to have a lot of energy. You just got to not suck. And if you suck, that's what they make medicine for. Go to the doctor. That's what pharmaceuticals are for, teach you how not to suck.
It's funny that you say that, though, because on another level, you don't necessarily have to have, you know, a high level of education or this or that. It's, are you willing?
Yes.
You know, because you can give something. Everybody has something to give, whether it's just your time and your presence, just showing up.
That's it.
Like, because we have mentors that just show up, you know, and it doesn't, and some of them are still in high school.
You know, it's interesting. So much of showing up is learning to just sit. people who grieve, they need somebody to sit with them in their grief. I call sitting in the shit. I mean, that's what it is. It's learning to sit in the shit. It's like, can you sit with the grieving? Because then you deserve to sit with them when they're happy. Right?
That's true.
And so what does that cost you? Nothing. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be rich. You don't have to be educated. Like these things that change people's lives, you do not have to be qualified to do. And that, I think that's like one of the biggest lies that we tell people is that you can mentor when you're enough. Well, what is enough? But if it's enough for you to show up, then that opens up the field a lot.
Yeah. I remember that I was listening to this guy. He was talking about people showing up. And he was like, man, I would give money. I would give resources. He was like, and they wouldn't even show up for me with the things that are free. Like, as in, like, I need somebody to come help me move, or I need somebody just to come sit. The things that were free, they wouldn't even give me that. But I was giving them money and resources, but you couldn't even give me the things that were free. So he was like, then you have to go back and be like, man, what type of person are you? You know, I'm giving, but you won't even give the stuff that's free. Just show up.
See, that's where boundaries come in.
Yeah.
Because nothing we have is endless, right? It's not limitless.
Right.
Like I like to think that I'm a limitless sunshine and cheer machine, right? That I'm always going to show up and I'm always going to cheer. Sometimes that cup's empty. And the boundary tells me, fill it up before you run your mouth, fill it up before you give into the anger, fill up before you try to push through a wall that's not going to move. And that's where these boundaries come in. It's like knowing where you can invest and knowing where your investment is going to take seat and go.
Yeah. So with you being this chipper, this sunshine, you know, person of just great spirit, great attitude. So what do you do when things get tough? Like, how do you find that motivation to keep going when things are actually tough as an entrepreneur, as a business owner?
So I feel like when things are hard, my first goal is to work my way out of it. That's always kind of my number one. It's like, how can I work my way out of this? And because I am an undiagnosed mentally ill person, I always sort of have this sort of like, okay, so this is going to be my strategic plan for this. And when this falls through, I'm going to do this. Like I'm constantly, I saw this article that this man who is a serial entrepreneur wrote about how there is a link between high anxiety and high entrepreneurship. Because you're always thinking about, well, what can I be doing for this? What can I be doing for this? And that if you treat the anxiety, will you not be as good of an entrepreneur? So it's like, are they flip sides of the same coin, right? And so, let's say about 2 years ago, we closed one of our businesses and it was very public and it was very nasty. And when you're a business owner, you don't always get to control that narrative.
Right.
Okay. So what people were saying about us online, the articles that were being written about us, the lies that were being told, the rumors that were being spread. It was so hurtful. It was so hurtful. And especially when you cannot respond. Okay. And so you put your head down and you work and you do the next right thing. And so I think that when you can always do the next right thing, even if it costs, even if it hurts, even if it's not what you want to do, then it always works out in the end. I don't know how. I don't know what spirit takes care of that. I don't know what energy takes care of that. I just know that the next right thing always works out in the end. And so it's working my way out of the bad situation by doing the next right thing. And just knowing that at some point it ends because no one's ever really obsessed with you. They move on. Somebody else is going to screw up and that's going to be who they're talking about. And so just learning to not overreact to the failure.
And is it a failure or is it just more of a learning experience when you really sit back and...
I think that we're always so scared to call a failure, but it's like the failure's where like the rubber meets the road, right? That's where like you learn to cook with the grease. It's where you learn like...
you learn.
So it's like calling a failure is just what it is.
Yeah.
Like sometimes the word just is what it is. And I think people are so scared to be like, I failed. And I'm like, fail all the time. Like I have stuff that blows up in my face all the time because that's part of the risk, right? And then when it pays off, people are like, oh, that's so smart. I'm like, well, you didn't see them 3 other dumb things I did to get to this 4th smart thing. And so I think that success and failure are two sides of the same coin.
Yes.
And to pretend like failure is not part of it, or that it's like this dirty word that we shouldn't talk about, when that's where the sauce is made.
And see, like, even through that failure, it should serve as motivation too. Because it's like, hey, man, we just failed in this area. We didn't accomplish this, but you know what? I know what not to do next time. I can see the writing on the wall next time, or I know what type of person I should connect or not connect with. Yes. So you definitely in that failure, it's like, you know what? Thank you, God, because I still learned something from this. It's going to make me a better person, going to make me a better manager, a better entrepreneur. But I have to make sure I learn something from this failure. So that's why I always say, like, even in failure, it's always a learning experience. If you're willing to take that out of it, but you have to be willing to take that out of it. Some people just fail and just keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. Like, no, like, bro, you got to learn from this. Sis, you got to learn from this.
And like at some point, I don't know if that's failure as much as that's just stupidity.
That too.
I mean, like, if you're making the same, well, that's on you. Like, at some point, if you don't learn how to make the sauce, you ain't never gonna make it to dinner.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't be cooking.
Ain't nobody wanting that dry meat. We need a little sauce on it, okay? I love that I'm using all these kitchen metaphors, and I can't tell you the last time I cooked. I'm a go out to dinner kind of person.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
No, we don't have kids at home, so it's like you get that little extra discretionary income, and you're like, well, yeah, we're door dashing tonight.
Yeah,
nobody's getting in that.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. One day I'll get there. I got an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, so I'm
you just wait. Freedom is on the other side of that. You'll be eating out every night.
Let me ask you this. So, what's been the best business advice you've ever received, and how did it help you stay motivated? Best business advice you ever received? You know,
I kind of go back to that conversation with D.O.
Yeah.
I mean, because one of the things that it also taught me is that I sometimes think that we wait on other people to give us permission.
True.
To be great, to succeed, to start. I think a lot of times we wait on permission to start. Mm. I have coached businesses before that have spent so much time trying to create the process and make sure that it's perfect before they open. I'm like, that is going to break after sale number 3. And your fear keeps you from starting. Yeah. And so what that taught me was that the permission is mine to give. It's not mine to always get. And so learning to rely a little bit more on yourself and like what your instinct tells you. And it's like, it's changing that inner voice, right? That inner voice that says, no, you don't need to take a nap. You're lazy. That inner voice is like, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Take the nap. Take the nap. You can't take the nap every day. Some days you can take the nap. And so I think that that's what that taught me, was where permission is given and granted and who gives and grants it. Mm. And sometimes we wait for the other when it could have just been ourselves. Mm. I'm not going to wait for somebody else to tell me I can be great. I'm just going to go try to be great.
Yeah. And what they say, paralysis by analysis.
Gosh. I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, I think a lot of people they get stuck right there because of fear. You know, what about the economy? And what about this? I had an assistant one time tell me, he goes, listen, I don't know. We're going to have this baby. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how are we going to have a baby when the price of gasoline is this much? And he goes, they have nothing to do with each other, except they have everything to do with each other when it's paralysis by analysis. Yeah. And so I think that especially in the entrepreneur world, we can get stuck there. And so I think one thing that's really important is having a community, right? And so I have retailers that we all text each other and check on each other. Like, I had a really crappy day. How was your day? Or I'm really stuck on this. What are you doing? And so community over competition is a thing. Like, I literally talk to people who sell the exact same things that I do.
Yeah.
Because it's community over competition. And so I think that creating that community that gives you that feedback, that helps you with all of that, I think that's just, it cannot be said how important that is. Because you hear about their expertise, their experience, and it's not just yours. And so being able to reach out and ask for help like that, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. It helps with the fear, I think, that, okay, they've tried this, they've done this, I've done this, and you kind of help put it together. I really think anytime that you can join some sort of collective that's reflective of your community, that you can sit down and be like, I'll say this for anybody who's listening or watching, I think it's really funny that we film podcasts now. You used to record podcasts and now you film them. Like, I get it, but it's like, it's all changing really fast. You know what I mean? It was like 2 years ago, you would have done this. It's just been, we'd have headphones on our head and we'd be stuck in this little, anyways. What was I saying? hell, I don't know. Like, now I'm off on something else. So I think, so going back to like that community element of being able to call and ask somebody, I think that's really, truly so key. Because like I have a friend who, she owns a retail store that's been in business 40 years and she's owned it like 23 of that. Her take on things is invaluable. She's been through every economic up and down that you can have. Hearing her strategy and hearing that, it's very comforting to me because my store will be 6 years old in May.
Yeah.
And so being able to hear that and be like, okay, I'm not crazy. Learning how to not take the failure so personally. Like when you have a down sales day and you're like, oh, everybody hates me. I was like, no, it's just kind of cold and windy and that's bad for retail and restaurants. Like, so learning to have that kind of perspective, I think that also comes from that community. You know, being able to reach out and say something. Because I think this happens a lot with entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship can feel like an island, okay? Because there is an assumption when you own a business that you are smart and that you are rich and that you make all the rules, which means you can change the rules anytime you want to, okay? And so you are very lucky if one of those is true when you start a business. And you're very lucky if any of those are true when you run your business. And so entrepreneurs tend to not ask for help as much as they need to because they don't want people to think they're dumb. Yeah. They don't want to, well, what if I give this up without, what about the fear, the paralysis by analysis? I think that's such a great phrase that's not really said enough. I think that we tend to be an island when we really need to be, you know, on land together. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that entrepreneurs run into that they didn't realize. Like I always say that you will turn a customer into a friend before you turn a friend into a customer.
Ooh, I like that. That's spot on.
Especially when like in the retail world and in the South, Southern women who were raised in church have a lot of Southern Christian guilt. Oh, I can't spend that. My husband will kill me. Nobody has been murdered for buying a shirt at the shop at Coldwater. Okay. It's not happened yet. I don't think it's going to happen. But women feel the need to justify expenditures. Right. And so I have found that some of the women that I was closest to when I first started this felt uncomfortable letting me know what they were willing to pay for clothes, like doing business with me. And now some of my closest friends are customers that I've met and we've developed this relationship over the years. And so I think that is so important for people to understand is that a customer will be a friend before a friend will be a customer.
I like that.
That's shocking when you first start out because you just think, oh, I've got this huge network and people are going to shop. Maybe the first week. And then you have to develop it from there. It's tough. And I think that can depend. I think when it's those very personal transactions, especially in a retail store where they're consistent and it's a lot of your inventory turns over. So they're constantly coming in. People, women, Southern Christian guilt will eat you alive if you're not careful. You know, women are taught, don't talk about money. Don't talk about politics. Don't talk about religion. Don't talk about race. People will think you're ugly. That's not nice. It's not, good girls don't talk about stuff like that. And then here we are owning businesses and we don't know how to talk about finances. Here we are trying to be community leaders and we don't know how to talk about racism. Here we are trying to lead teams and we don't know how to teach them and coach them and motivate them when their world has fallen apart. And so the things that we learn in a polite society don't always translate in a very, very gray, messy world. And we have to learn to sort of come past that. And we have to learn through that. And really, we have to love through that, right? Because not having those conversations put us at a disadvantage. Women not talking about their business numbers, it puts us at a disadvantage. I can't tell you how many networking events I've heard men talk about like, oh, our Q3 numbers or blah, blah, blah. If you told a woman I did $150,000 this quarter, they'd be like, why would you tell me? We're very funny about it because Southern Christian women were raised that was impolite to talk about.
I like the fact that when you was talking about community, like helping like somebody that's been in business longer than you, or even somebody just been in the same type of business to where you can lean on, you know, their knowledge. And I've heard that knowledge is one thing that can cancel out fear. Because if you have knowledge of that thing, then you're no longer going to be as afraid.
Yes.
Because think about if this room was, if a snake crawled in this room right now, we would freak out. But if Dwayne is a snake expert and he said, oh, that's just blah, 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 we're going to be like, oh, we straight because he knows what this is, what it can do and can't do. I'm going to be a whole lot more
Does
confident.
that microphone come up to them rafters? Because that's where we're going to finish this podcast. I don't care what that thing's doing over there. He better be handling it out the door. You picked the wrong analogy for this girl. Absolutely not. But I think your point is well made, even if it's going to be from the rafters. But I do think that's right. I think that knowledge creates a comfort, right? And so what's what we want, right? It's like, what is wealth?
Yes.
Wealth is comfort. And wealth is not peace. You can live in the biggest house. You can pay your bills on time. You can drive a nice car. You can go out to dinner every night. You don't have to cook. No more blue box mac and cheese for you. But it cannot buy peace.
Cannot. I agree with you.
And so what is wealth but comfort? And what is comfort but peace?
Yeah.
And I think that this sort of entrepreneurial ecosystem that we see with the books and the reality shows and all of I think that that's what we get lost in is like, well, you're not really an entrepreneur if you're not making millions of dollars. You know what? A successful entrepreneur, if you get to pay yourself every month, you're killing it.
Yes.
Let's change what that bar looks like. If you have a side hustle and it's hitting your mortgage every month, I think you're killing it. Like, I think that we have gotten so bought into that success equals millions.
Yes.
But success is comfort.
Yeah.
Success is comfort.
I'll also say that success is also relief.
Gosh, yes.
Because if you need $300 extra a month to pay this car note because finances just went out of whack and you start a side hustle and like you said, it's hitting the mortgage, in this example, it's hitting the car, bro, you successful.
That's
Since
right.
you on your way.
That's right. No,
Because you got relief.
that's absolutely it. And you can't sell from behind. Okay. So when I was first starting out in sales, I got recruited to go sell one of them direct commission insurance companies. And I went to Georgia for the training. And one of the things that they talked about, and I thought this was really fascinating, is that they wanted you to coach your spouse, coach your parents, whoever it was that was sort of your team at home, to not ask you every single day, did you close the deal? Did you close the deal? Did you close the deal? Because you can't sell under that kind of pressure. It's called selling from behind. When you have a negative financial standpoint, when you're in a negative headspace, you can't sell from there. And so when you have the comfort and you have the relief and you have peace, you're at your best place to succeed, right? Because you're not selling from behind. You're selling from your best mental standpoint. You're selling from where your family is taken care of. It's like, how can you sell and dig yourself out when you're starving, right? And it goes back to, how can you pick yourself up by your bootstraps if you don't have boots? Yeah. There's an equity situation there, right? So it's like, you can't sell from behind the same way as the person who has the emotional resources to sell. I'm not talking necessarily about financial and these other tools. I'm talking about the emotional resources to get the job done. And so I think that all these things that we talk about at these really high levels, we really need to kind of get back to, this is day one. Right? This is the base level. Like, we want people to come in and be fired up and we want to do this, but that is a tone and pace that doesn't last forever.
True.
It's a tone and pace that doesn't last forever. I think it's really unrealistic, like what we ask of people to do to make their business succeed, because you just burn out so fast. And so I think that we have to have a real conversation in the entrepreneurial world about what does success look like. And I think that people need to learn how to define success for themselves. Exactly. Because it's going to be different from person to person, from family to family. Because what I may view as success and what I may need may not be what this next guy needs. Right. Because I'm in talks now, or possibly, doing another business with a friend of mine. And I'm like, I don't need to make 10, 15,000. Now, if we did, that's great. I was like, man, just another side hustle coming, another stream of income, $1,500, $2,000 a month. I was like, I'm good. Right. We can scale it in the future, but I don't necessarily have to have. Well, and I think it's so smart, because people come in and they're like, oh, we're going to do this $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 when they're only bringing the $1,500. It's like failure, failure to launch. It didn't work. And it's like, that's $2,000. Okay. So have y'all seen this trend on the internet about, would you slap your sibling for $100,000? So I looked at my husband the other night and I said, what would be the number for you to punch me in the face? And he was like, punch you in the face. I said, okay, let's dial that back a little bit. What would it take for you to slap me in the face? Because, that's going to sting. It's going to leave a red mark, but it's over in like a couple minutes. Like it's done. Like if you really get after it. And he was like, slap you in the face. I don't know, like a low 7-figure. I said, I would slap the shit out of you for $10,000.
For 10 bands.
$10,000. I probably would do it for $5,000.
This was slapping
Somebody walks up with a bag of cash. I'm slapping the shit out of you for $5,000. Like, I think that anyways, I think that we are so crazy about money that we've lost the sight of, what if I could cover my mortgage with this?
Yeah.
What if I could cover my family going to vacation this year?
Yeah.
Like, what is success if not comfort? And so I think that we have to have a real reckoning about what we're asking of our entrepreneurs, because our entrepreneurs, they are the change makers. They are the people who are moving the needle. They are the ones that create community. And I'll say this, I think this gets lost in the conversation too. And this is something I really felt during the pandemic, is that I think we talk so much about small businesses and we talk so much about local that we forget Walmart hires local people. Mm-hmm. That franchise restaurant, they hire local people. It is an ecosystem. We can't bring in large manufacturing facilities if we don't have this ecosystem. They have to have places to work, play, and shop. And so that small business has to feed the big business, and that big business is important because those are the good paying jobs that allow them to support the small business. And so I think that all the business is important because our people are important. Yeah. And so until we can reframe and think about how we think about and value businesses, because I feel like, the tornado that hit a couple of weeks ago in Tuscaloosa, everybody's like, support our small businesses. And I'm like, absolutely. But don't forget to go to XYZ chain store because your neighbor works there. Let's make sure her job's okay too. Let's make sure that fry cook that he gets to go to work the next day because you went and supported that one too. And so I think that we have to kind of change the way that we talk about that and we think about that. And so I think that's a really important element to the business ecosystem that people don't think about, is that the small needs the big and the big needs the small, and they all hire your people. Yeah. They all hire your people.
Yeah, that's good. And this kind of goes back to like every business is important. Even though it may be a super big chain, but that chain, like you said, this is what's allowing your family to live well and then to spend at the small businesses. So
and that tax revenue is what comes in and helps fund your schools. That tax revenue is what comes in and pays for your, fire, police. They help fund your utilities. They're the ones that help say, okay, now my MSA, my metropolitan statistic analysis, this is what says, okay, we are from ADECO. We are from the Department of Transportation. We're going to give y'all some money to help get that pothole taken care of, right? So these are the monies that help justify the state money. These are the monies that help justify the federal money. All of it is good.
Gotcha.
And I think that we have to change that, because I saw that so much during COVID that everybody wanted to rush out and support the small businesses. And oh my gosh, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful because my business survived COVID, right? Because people really were trying to be very intentional about how they spent their money. But one of the things I kept talking about was don't forget the franchise restaurants, because a lot of times they're owned by a local person, right?
That's
so
true.
People will say, why don't we have a such and such? And it's like, we can. You can go for $1 million and you could invest in this franchise and bring it here. So a lot of these chain things are brought here by local people and by local investors who hire local people to run them. And so I think that's an important nuance that we sometimes forget about, that I feel like I'm a benefactor of, because I am a small business and I'm locally owned and operated and I hire local people and we do this all on a local level, that people are like, you should support her. And it's like, well, yeah, but they hire local people too.
Yeah.
I feel like that there's a dishonesty there if we act like they're not important too.
Yeah. I like that. I haven't heard that angle, that perspective. So that's pretty dope. Yeah.
It's weird to think about. Like, I think that my volunteerism with it, I've been volunteering with the Shoals Chamber of Commerce now for about 20 years. And the conversations that you see other communities have about business, when you see like the recruiting effort that happens to bring the manufacturing facilities here, the recruiting efforts that happen to bring the big retailers here, they look for an ecosystem. They look for the small businesses. They look for the large businesses. They look for community to invest in because they're going to bring their people here to open it. They're going to live here for a couple of years. They're putting their brand on your community, and you got to be able to support that, right? With this whole community of businesses that you create. So one's not more important than the other. Well, you know what? I'm going to take that back a little bit. Small businesses might be just a little bit more important because we're the ones who sponsor your baseball teams. We're the ones who give you the, so it's like, I think that it's okay to give a little bit more props to your local people because they're going to be a little bit more invested. But don't forget the big guys, they hire your people too.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's good talk right there. Let's go to this question right here then. It's gonna be kind of funny since you're a funny person. So let's
funny, not fun.
So what is the weirdest or funniest moment that has happened in your business journey? I know you got some.
So, okay. So the first time I went on Home Shopping Network, so I go down to Florida and you have to go through like all this training because they're regulated by the FTC, they're regulated by the SEC, there's all this training that you have to go through and they learn a lot about you. And there's all these one-on-ones where they're trying to figure out what part of your story, you personally, what about your product and what about that's best crafted for the audience. Okay. And so they really wanted me to talk about being a widow, but you can't be sad about it. You have to be like chipper about it. And I'm like, well, I don't know how that works. And so the first time I go on, there's a viewing party here, okay? It's at Flobama. My cousins own it downtown. Tons of young professionals. I was in a young professional program. They show up at this bar on like a Wednesday afternoon. Everybody's watching this launch. I was so nervous. I was sweating so bad. I ruined my hair. I ruined my makeup. I look like a wet mop, okay, when I get up there. Later, my hair looked better. And the lady that was with me, she goes, why didn't you look like this morning? I'm like, why are you still talking to me? But anyways, so I get up there and I'm trying to tell my story. And they're like, tell us a little bit about your entrepreneur story. And I say, I, blah, blah, blah. And then as I'm trying to bring it to market, my husband, he just dies. And it was like, what did she just say? Because it sounded like the punchline of a joke. But it's like, how do you say your husband died in a really positive way? And the host is looking at me like, who let this lunatic psychopath on the studio? And they said at the bar that everybody went, and then just died laughing because it was so awkward. And you're in like 100 million homes. And you're like, my husband died. Like, oh my gosh. It was the most... That didn't go the way I thought it would. I did it a lot better the second take. And they were like, you did great. And I'm like, don't lie to my face. But how do you talk about that in an authentic way that doesn't bum out the customer, but also it's not a punchline. That was like an impossible ask. So it was a weird ask. And then I did it so awkward. I mean, it was just with my mop head, ruined my hair. I was so nervous. Yeah, that was weird. That was really weird. But one of the funnier things that's ever happened, it actually happened when I was not present. So I took my mom to Dallas Market with me when we had launched Alchemy. And we're in this booth and my mother is very introverted. But she is probably the funniest human being I know. And she's a classic introvert. So if she's like comfortable with you, she'll talk, she'll joke. But if she doesn't know you and she's not comfortable, mute. Like she will just sit there and not say a word. And she looks like the sweetest, cutest little Sunday school teacher you've ever seen in your whole entire life. So people just assume she's this sweet little, okay. So we're at Dallas Market and I go to get us some lunch and she's like, okay, I can do this. I can sell this. And so she's got our little handout and she's standing there and people would walk by and she'd pass it to them. And this woman walks up and she said she was real snooty looking. And she said, so she passed her the flyer and she's telling her about it. My daughter created this and blah, blah. And the goes, oh, okay, well, I'll think about that. And she walks over to the next booth and she goes and drops it in the garbage can. And my mother, she snaps. She goes, I can still see you. And this woman runs like Forrest Gump, runs away. And so when I'm coming back, people are like, your mama. I'm like, your mama? Like, what are we talking about? When I get back, she goes, I am done. I'm done with you. I'm done with the show. I'm done with these. I gotta go. She takes her lunch and I'm going, I was gone for 20 minutes. And so the people from the booth are coming going, oh, that woman's awful. She's been here before. And I was like, Mama, you cannot cuss out the customer. She goes, the hell I can't. I was like, Mama, it was the funniest. It's still to this day when I think about Dallas Market, I think about my mama making a woman physically run away. And if you saw my mama, it's just even that much funnier because she's so short and cute. It's like you just don't think, yeah. She flat out called her out for being one. It was awesome. That's awesome. That's hilarious. Your Sunday school teacher looking mama cussing out a customer is so good.
This is some classic stuff right here.
I know you meant classy. I know that's what you meant was
that
classy.
Too.
Yes,
that
very
too.
classy. Yes, I've never been accused of being a diffident flower for sure.
Oh, you should have me fooled.
Yes, I'm sure I have everybody fooled.
So, like your personality is definitely one of a kind. And I'm pretty
That's
sure.
really nice of you to say that. I appreciate you saying that. It's when you have a big personality and when you're a female and you're a big girl, it's like I can take up a lot of oxygen in a room. And so learning how do you take that energy? How do you inspire? How do you motivate? And when do you learn to shut your mouth?
Yeah.
Right? So I think one of the best things my parents ever taught me was you have to earn the right to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I came up, I would get to sit at tables because I had mentors who thought I could do more, who wanted me to do more. But I learned that I had to sit at that table until I earned the right to speak at that table. And then there comes a point that you have enough and you've learned enough that you are asked to speak first. And so I think that's one thing sometimes the younger generation misses is that, and it creates that disconnect between the younger generation and my generation and older is earning the right to speak at the table when you don't have any skin in the game, when you don't have any sweat equity, you don't have any pennies in it, you don't have anything. And so I think that even when you have a big personality like mine, learning when to use it and when to leverage it has been so important because I can say a lot of words in a day. I bet if I had a word count, it would be a lot. But I hope that those words aren't just hot air coming out of my mouth. I hope they actually mean something to somebody, that they leave my store and they feel better because they've come in. They leave my store and they feel inspired because they've come in. They feel like, I want people to feel like time spent with me, even if it was a little, was well worth it. And so I think that even people with big personalities can learn to control them and leverage them. And I also think that we have to learn to talk about how powerful our introverts are. Right?
Oh, yes. Hands down.
We always talk about like, why can't introverts be more like extroverts? Really and truly, extroverts could dial it back a little bit, right?
Yes.
I mean, I know that a lot of times we're seen as the leaders and we're the loud ones and we're the culture creators and we're all this, but it's the introverts that drive it. My best friend works with me and she's very introverted and she's the one that keeps me in check. If I come in and my tone's any sort of way, she's like, you better go back out there and apologize to your team. You sound like an asshole right now. And it's like, I appreciate that, right? Like everybody needs an accountability partner.
Yeah.
I'm like, if you don't have a Bridget, you need to get a Bridget. You can't have mine. She's spoken for. That one, she don't have a lot of bandwidth. This is I get that bandwidth. But like I think having people in your life that hold you accountable, because it's so easy when you have a big personality and you have a big ego. To surround yourself with yes people. Mm-hmm. You're so funny. You're so great. Just to fill your cup and fill your cup and fill your cup. But then you're never better. You're never great. When everybody tells you you're great, where do you go from there, right? And so there has to be an equalizer to it. So when I first started selling with Jewelry Television, it's called JTV. They're out of Knoxville. They are the most positive, uplifting. They're like, oh, is that Ashley Morrow? And I'm like, listen, I don't know why y'all act like I've ever been paid like the light bill here. Do you know what I mean? But they just make you feel so good and like you're really bringing something to the table. And then I come back and my team's like, sit down. You're not at JTV anymore. You're back here. And this is the real world. And we're not going to let you talk and act any sort of way. And I appreciate that because I think that sometimes our mouths can overrun our hearts.
Yeah. I know with myself, like as much as I like to talk, you know, when I'm in certain settings, if I'm listening to somebody, I literally have to tell myself, don't say nothing. Just listen. Be quiet. Don't listen. Don't respond. Don't try to overstep. Don't try to respond to say something that's better than what they say. Because I'm always in the back of my mouth, it's like, oh, I got something I can say right now. And it'll just be like, boom, like in here. But it's like
hard to know. When is the difference of I'm exchanging this energy with you and I'm one-upping you?
Yes.
It's hard. And I think that there's an intention with that and a conscientiousness that I'm hearing you say that I think that's the difference is that when you're conscious about
Yeah.
that, when you're intentional about that, when you know that you can keep going back and forth and up and up and up and at some point it's like, okay, well, when does this come down?
Right.
When does the energy change back here? I love to share this story because I think it makes people uncomfortable and I'm really comfortable with that. So last year I went to a psychiatrist and I said, she was like, what's wrong? I was like, well, I think there's something wrong with my noggin. I was like, I think I have ADD or ADHD. It has gotten significantly worse since I had COVID in 2020. I was like, I know I'm having some neurological issues from when I had COVID, but COVID is known to exasperate and really take advantage of what's already happening in your body. So if your heart was already weak, it's going to go after your heart if your lungs were already weak. And then we have these neurological issues. My father's a physician. He's had people who have never, he's taken care of for 30 years, who've never struggled with depression and anxiety. And after they had COVID, they had these neurological issues. And so I said, I probably should have come here 20 years ago to check on this. But you always think like, I can work through this. This is just this is that. But like at this point, something has to happen. And so she sat me down, she did the assessment and she said, well, congratulations. You have ADD. You're eat up with it. And I don't see how you made it to your 40s without clinical intervention. And so getting on the medicine has helped with that. With the, I got to jump in. It's helped with the brain fog. It's helped with the, like, to think that I could have been living my life in a completely different way. And people are like, "Ew, you see a psychiatrist?" I'm like, yes. And that's why I'm so happy and healthy, right? I'm not going there for talk therapy. I'm going there to make sure that my body is functioning at the best that it can, that my brain, like, this is my value, right? I have no talent other than talking. I can't sing. I can sort of cook. I don't like it. I do nothing but talk. And so if this is my value and this is my motivation and these are the things that I leave the world and these are the things that I hope make people feel better and do better and want more, and then I have to make sure that's okay. And so I think having really honest conversations about that gives people permission to feel like they can do it too.
Good.
I wish I had gone 20 something years ago. I wonder how different my life would be if I had gone that much longer, like how much easier things would have been for me.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't talk about therapy and counseling, so that's big.
And
that's big.
My dad and I were talking this morning about a local therapist here, and he said, it's crazy that the latest statistic is 2 out of 3 people need counseling.
I can agree with that.
2 out of 3. That's significant. It's because we're overconnected to be disconnected. Families don't live perfect lives. They're messy people trying to work through a messy world. Trauma. Like, I think if we're not having honest conversations about that, we are going to be looking at a reckoning of our mental health.
And it's already getting bad. It's already bad.
Yeah, it is already bad. But I think that if we don't start having real conversations and offering real grace to people, it's like, who cares if I go see a psychiatrist? I feel better than I did when I was in my 30s. And I was awesome in my 30s. Like, I think that we have to, there's so many conversations that we need to change. And a lot of times it's changing that conversation with yourself. What you're willing to, that boundary, what you're willing to accept, what you're willing to reject, what you're willing to invest in. I think that's so important, is changing that conversation here and then investing in the learning. So then how do I take what I've learned and take it somewhere else? I graduated from a statewide leadership program. And my first question was, well, how do I take what I learned here and how do I take it back to my community? How do I take what I learned to talk about unconscious bias and racism in my community? And then how do I go out as a white woman and talk about this here? Like, how do we affect this change from the education and from the wisdom that we have? And then how do we go out and do it? And so sometimes the first way to change something is, how do we talk to ourselves?
I like that. Well, let me ask you this last question and we'll get up out of here. First off, you've done an excellent job. You have been very entertaining, great knowledge, great passion, great insight, and just been on point. Breath of fresh air, definitely. Now, what is one myth about being an entrepreneur that you can share with people that they need to stop believing in? What's that one myth?
So I think to the things that I said earlier, it's about, you're not an island, and don't act like you're one. People are going to assume that you're smart, that you're rich, that I have people all the time who are like, but you own this business. Why can't you just change the rules? Like, knowing that those boundaries matter and knowing that people are going to perceive you as a certain way, and knowing that when you go in can kind of change what you're willing to set your goal for and what you're willing to accept back. And so knowing that it's easier to turn a customer into a friend than a friend into a customer, knowing that people are going to assume that you can do whatever you want to because you own the business, which means you can come in early, you can stay late, you can make an exception, right? And so it's developing those processes, those procedures, those boundaries, and sticking to them, I think is really, really important. I'm not talking about, okay, when someone comes to the cash register, we're going to say this and we're going to do this. I'm talking about your actual rules of engagement, of like how you're going to deal with people, how you're going to deal with hard stuff. I think that's really important to know that, and to know that up front and to stick to it. And so maybe it's your rule of thumb is like, we're just going to do people the best that we can, and we're going to treat them the best that we can, and we're just going to go with that. But knowing that people will assume that you're successful, and it will create, it creates a conflict as you're growing and you're still learning how to pay yourself and you're still trying to pay your team and you're trying to get off the ground. People are like, but you own your business, you're successful. And it's like, I started with a grape. Like, it's trying to get people to really see the hard work that it takes.
Yes.
You're going to have an amazing amount of invisible labor that goes into your business, even if it's nothing else other than just your worry.
Yep.
Right. And so don't commit to being an island. Don't let people just assume that. Reach out to people, join a chamber, join a networking group, tell people like, hey, I need help with this. Like, they understand because they get it. They're like-minded. Anybody that's putting in the effort to go to a networking event, anybody that's putting in that effort to show up to a lunch and learn, or they get it.
Yeah.
Like, find your people and rely on them, because it's really hard to be an island.
I agree. You said something about, and it just reminded me of this quote. It says, you have to be willing to put your feet to the pavement without a payment.
Ooh.
And I think that most entrepreneurs think that I gotta make this money now. Now the money got to come in immediately. Sometimes that does not happen. Sometimes as a person that is self-employed, you may break even or go in a negative, which means you're not really making any money maybe that first year or two, but you have to be willing to put your feet to the pavement without a payment. And then the other thing that I would say is a big myth is some entrepreneurs think that they don't have to work a 9 to 5 while they're building their side hustle or building their business. You would have to have, if you have to have money coming in, you need to get a 9 to 5. Get that 9 to 5, work that side hustle on the side, build it up until it replaces that 9 to 5 money. Now you can walk away. Now there's some people that just walk away from their jobs and go do, hey, I'm not recommending it. Does it happen? Yes. Could it happen? Yes. But do what's smart and what's best for your family.
And what a privilege to get to do that. When we started the shop, we were doing these coaching groups. And so I had 10 businesses that I was coaching. I was doing one-on-one sessions every day. I was doing masterminds 2 times a month with these groups. That's like constant counseling while also trying to market and grow a business. But it was that business that funded this business. So that business made sure everybody got paid. So then the money that we made could go back into inventory. And it was hard. It was really, really hard. Now, I am a child of privilege. My parents were small business owners. They both did very well. My father was a physician. He paid for me to go to college. When you graduate from college with no debt, okay, that's a level of privilege. When he helps you with a down payment for your house, that's a level of privilege. Knowing that you can take a risk because your daddy's not going to let you starve is privilege. I think that's also a conversation that we're not having, right? We look at these entrepreneurs and we're like, oh, wow. Look at these 40 under 40 list. Oh, wow. Yeah, but she went to Harvard, which means she also went to a boarding school. And then so that means her parents are rich. So like she started so far ahead.
Yeah.
Like, let's compare what we're comparing. And so I think one thing that I hear a lot that entrepreneurs don't talk about is that we're not honest about money. And so people are like, well, you shouldn't, just because you have privilege doesn't mean you didn't work hard. Hell no, it doesn't mean I didn't work hard. It means that I had a little more peace.
Yeah.
Right.
You had a little bit more of advantage.
When you know that your parents aren't going to let you starve then you can kind of take a little bit more of a risk. And so I really, I would caution people as they start businesses and they start entrepreneurships, make sure that who you're being mentored by and who you're looking up to, the books that you're reading, the podcasts that you're listening to, make sure they're being honest about that, because it's so easy to feel like I'm never going to get there because I'm poor and I don't have these resources, when it's like, well, that's not fair because this person did have resources. So of course they were able to start a business. When you have a resource, when you have family that's willing to invest or family that's willing to co-sign a loan.
Yeah.
That is a huge jumpstart.
It is.
So I think that really actually may be one of my biggest pieces of advice, is make sure that the business advice that you're following is actually applicable to you. Because I think we hear so many times, I'm telling y'all, this 40 under 40 list, they grab my ass. Like, because it's always Ivy League education. They did this, they did this. Well, it's like, well, of course they're in Silicon Valley with a startup that's worth $1 billion when you have $1 million education and network to back you up. And so I think there's an authenticity there that's lacking if we're not truly talking about how privilege plays into entrepreneurship.
Yes. Big time, big time, big time.
You know, it's, I was not, you know, I started my company because I had a little bit of extra money when my husband died. I had a life insurance payout. I sold our house and moved. So like I had this money that appeared out of grief, essentially. But if I don't talk about that, then what happens when the next person wants to start and they're like, well, where do I get $50,000? I'm like, well, hopefully not the way I got it.
Yeah.
Right. But I think we have to be really honest about that. And I don't think that entrepreneurs always are, because it's not how we're taught to talk about money. But I think it puts a disadvantage on the disadvantaged.
And I also think they don't want to talk about it because it's like, oh, well, I kind of got a leg up on you and I'm over here making it seem like I got it out the mud or I started from the bottom. But in actuality, you know, mommy and daddy, you know what I'm saying? They kind of hooked me up, you know?
Well,
so
right.
so now I lose that relatability to you because you over here struggling, trying to figure out how you got to get a loan. You got to have somebody to co-sign or you're not even gonna be able to start the business, or you gotta wait. Whereas with me, you know, I did have some help. Sorry. You know?
Right. I mean, I think that we keep people, you know, again, because a lot of times when we're first starting, we're waiting for somebody to give us permission to be great.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, how discouraging when the story doesn't reflect yours. And so I wish entrepreneurs were more honest about where their money came up from. Like, I started the side hustle with $1,500 out of my pocket, or I had an investor. I had an angel investor. I went to the SBA and got a loan. I went to my bank and got a loan. Like, I wish people were a little more upfront about that, because it's so discouraging to read success story after success story. And it's like, well, hell yes, you can be successful if your parents give you money.
Yeah.
Like, of course I was able to start a business when my parents were able to help me and make sure I didn't starve. Like, that kind of social safety net. Jeez Louise.
Yeah, it's a big difference. I even listen to the Bigger Pockets podcast because I do real estate entrepreneur, real estate investing. And some of their stories, I get to listen. I was like, this does not relate to the average person. Like,
That's right.
The thumbnail and the topic will make you think it's like, oh yeah, it's gonna be a good one for me. I get on and start listening. I was like, bro, like, you started off. First off, you was in the military. You came out and you get loans from the military without no money down. Like, the average person is not in the military.
That's right. So like, that's a good podcast for our veterans who are looking. Let's be honest about who the market is and the target audience is for that. Like, and again, privilege doesn't mean you don't work hard, but I think that it's disingenuous to not at least mention it in passing. Darn. Like, I mean, I am so much better off because of my parents.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so much better off because the communities that they invested in and that they have poured out to for so long invested in them. You know, my father's clinics are in Phil Campbell and Hackleburg. I owe a debt to those communities for the life that I live. Yeah. And so I don't forget that. That doesn't not mean anything to me. Just because I didn't grow up there, their community support of my father's practice has made a huge difference in my life. The people of Russellville, that's where my father has his hospital privileges. I owe a debt to those communities that I will always stand up for them. I will always help them because my life is better because of the investment they made in him and the support of him, which allowed him to support me. And so I think that these are conversations that we also have to have as entrepreneurs, or that we need to be listening out for, right? So that we can learn from that person that more is a little bit more reflective of what our situation is. I think it's just really discouraging to 40 under 40 list. I can't let it go. I can't let it go. It's that imposter syndrome, right? It's like, it just creates these like barriers to entry for people that if you're already disadvantaged, if you're already poor, if you don't have a fancy education, if you don't have all of these barriers to success, don't have to always exist. There are ways around barriers. But if we're not having authentic conversations about it, get it.
What's your dad's name?
Keith Morrow.
I thought so. I work for Social Security, and there's so many people that come in. I'm like, what doctor do you use? Dr. Stanley Keith Morrow.
Keith Morrow. That's my sweet daddy. He served those rural communities for so long. You know, back in 2011, when the tornadoes hit, his Hackleburg Clinic was gone. His Phil Campbell Clinic was gone. One day, wiped off the map. And so to watch my dad reinvest in those communities when really so much would be easier for him to go to Russellville. There's more just even utilities at the time, like having access to high-speed internet, you know, changes the way you run a clinic. And so to watch him reinvest there when it was harder, it's like, that's the good stuff right there. Not walking away from these communities that he has helped raise their children, you know, and they're getting their booster shots to go to school, to getting their shots to go to college. Like when you take care of people from cradle to grave, you know, he was an important part of that community and a good place for people to rally around. He's the only doctor in both of those towns. And so to watch him reinvest there and to watch, he really, to me, was like sort of like this unwilling beacon of hope. You know, he just wanted to take care of people. And he ended up getting a lot of national attention because the guy that owns the Pepsi bottling company in Winfield turned an old Pepsi 18-wheeler into a mobile clinic for him, built the stairs.
Wow.
They had this little mobile office. Well, not everybody can ambulate upstairs. So my daddy would come out of the mobile clinic and go sit in their cars with them, with their charts, take care of them. The nurses would come out so they could sit in an air-conditioned car when it was hot. Like he worked that way for about a year and a half until they could get his clinic rebuilt and reset up. And it's like, that's the good stuff right there.
That
you
is.
know what I mean? Not leaving, even though it'd be easier, digging in when everybody else was leaving, when 32 out of 33 businesses are wiped off the face of the map and you say, I'm going to come back here and stay. That's the good stuff right there.
It is.
And so like, that's the legacy that you lead. Right. And so I'm so honored to have him as a father. My mother is equally as extraordinary. Like I'm very, very lucky to have been shaped by these two amazing humans who have set a standard outside of what society has said my standard should be. And so I'm very, very lucky to have that. It is a privilege to be their child.
Sweet. Where can they find you at, Miss Ashley Morrow?
Oh gosh. Well, really the best place to look at me is on Facebook. I mean, I got Instagram and TikTok, but I'm a Facebook girl. I'm middle-aged. I'm a middle-aged white lady. We're on Facebook.
Yeah.
All the Karens, we're on Facebook. I keep cutting his hair a little shorter and I'm like, just don't make me look like Karen, okay? Just still make me look kind of cool. So I'm a middle-aged white lady. I'm definitely on Facebook. You can follow me at the shop at Coldwater. Follow me, Ashley Morrow. I'm pretty easy to find. I got the verified check mark. I'm pretty fancy. You know, you can buy that now. Everybody's like, it's about time. I'm like, no, I absolutely paid $15 a month for that. But you know what? I know that sounds stupid to pay for that, but my page doesn't get ripped off anymore. I don't have anybody else that pops up pretending to be me, trying to scam people. It's because that was happening like at least twice a week.
Yeah.
Because as your profile grows and your engagement grows, people, I don't know how those bots know all that. I'm like, how do you know about somebody in Muscle Shoals, Alabama?
Them bots are smart.
Yeah. So you can hang out with me online. I'm downtown Tuscumbia, the shop at Coldwater. We're open Tuesday through Friday, 10 to 5, 10 to 4 on Saturdays, and I'm usually there.
All right. Anything else you want to say before we close out?
Hey, I'm really glad we got to do this and we finally got to connect and get it on the calendar.
Oh, it was dope.
This was fun.
This was very fun.
Yeah, this was so fun. I love this. I used to have a podcast, so I kind of miss this.
Oh.
They're hard. I don't know if your listeners understand how hard it is to do this because it sounds fun because you're just talking and you're chilling. But to have like a focus and to have okay, so this night we're going to do this and we're inviting the guest and coordinating. It's a lot of work.
Yes, I think some other people have grown to understand that when they were trying to do their own podcast, like how much work actually goes into, and especially to be able to stay on task and not just talk and just be talking about nothing, but to have a purpose behind what you're talking about and an end point and a starting point.
Right.
So yes, well, like I said, thank you for that, and thank you for jumping on with us tonight. You have definitely been a breath of fresh air.
Oh, you're so nice to say
like
that.
you said, I would question your punchline tonight. You have been fun and funny.
But you think that because I'm funny. You think you have fun, but we ain't done nothing but be funny. I'm telling you.
That's fun though.
They are first cousins that go to Christmas together and they go to Thanksgiving together, but they are not identical twins. They're cousins.
All right, let's get up out of here. That's the end of the episode. Lonzo Jones. We had Miss Ashley Morrow with us tonight. Elevated Chat Room. Elevate your mind. Elevate your life. We out. You guys be blessed.